70% of classroom teachers say that student phone distraction is a major problem, and something like 95% of teenagers have a smartphone, with half of them saying that they're online almost constantly. And this school year, our state, California, passed a law to finally do something about it. It's called AB 3216. It's the Phone Free School Act, and it basically it requires every school district in the state to adopt a policy limiting or prohibiting cell phone use during the school day. On paper, it sounds simple, but as a career educator, I've seen how school districts work. I've seen how adults in education work and operate. I can predict already that the rollout of this law will be anything but simple. So in this video, let's see what the bill says and what it kind of doesn't say, and what's already happening, some of the outcomes for districts who have already implemented phone policies. And by the way, I'm David, the California counselor on YouTube. During the day, I'm a high school counselor, and I'm also a parent here in the state of California. And I kind of wanted to walk you through this update because it's a bigger story than just, oh, our state, California banned phones in schools. And that's probably what the headlines will say. But the thing is, well, first of all, it's not actually a ban. The language is that the bill requires school districts to have some kind of policy. So it's either a limitation, or if the district chooses to, it's a complete ban prohibiting phone use. So it's not really like this one size fits all mandate. So what that means is that every district in our state is currently, or over the summer, trying to figure out its own version of the bill. A lot of them, quite honestly, are struggling to even agree on what it should look like for their schools, for their community, and for their families. I know that some are opting for a full-on start of the day dismissal bell to bell restriction, while others might be going for something a little bit softer. So for you, what that means is that, like, depending on where you live, your community, and how your district kind of enforces things, your kid's experience with this bill, with the rollout, could look completely different than the kid in the neighboring city. Secondly, we've already had some of the data trickling in from school districts who have already implemented cell phone policies. LAUSD, the second largest school district in our country, banned phones 2 years ago in 2024. They started initially with the backpack rule, which means that all the phones turn off, go away, and they stay away in your backpacks during instructional time. Another district, Mount Diablo Unified, they did something similar. And teachers in that district have been very vocal about what has changed. Their classrooms feel more focused, there's livelier discussions, and noticeably less fighting. And I honestly believe it, because firsthand I see a lot that the majority of the interpersonal drama on school campuses today, like the things that end up in our front office, in the counselor's office, these are issues that a lot of times they get activated or lit up by something that happened online, on the phone. Is something that somebody said, Snapchat, the DMs, screenshots. The phone is often the culprit or the center of the equation. Thirdly, and this is the part where I do want parents to key in on, the phone policies is not just about classroom distraction or even like academic integrity and cheating. There is a darker side to it, and it's one that doesn't often get talked about on YouTube or in the articles or in the forums, but it is part of what should be driving our conversation today. Things like students filming one another, doing inappropriate things, or at times even like illegal things. People permanently putting on the internet, on the web, someone else at their worst for people to see, not just for months to come, but seemingly a lifetime. And every year there's always those anonymous accounts posting girls or other students to make fun of their bodies, to fat shame them. And there's always the he said, she said drama, the conflict that spills out into fights that happen in our schools, in the hallways or at the parks. And every generation, you know, they grow up having interpersonal conflicts for sure, but there's something about these pocket devices, these phones, that amplify and accelerate the issues today. And the thing is, like with any tool, the phone, it can be used both ways. The denominator is oftentimes dependent on the user, right? Like who is using the tool. However, for us to expect a child's brain, one that is not fully developed, to self-regulate against a device whose companies employ teams of the smartest engineers to make addictive, that's for sure a losing fight. Because I think about it like as adults, we can barely manage our own phone addictions. So why or how could we expect a 14-year-old to do much better? And on top of that, what is the point exactly of criticizing kids these days and their cell phone addictions? I don't think that's very helpful or a good posture to have when approaching this issue. And I want to admit that I struggle with the phone. I catch myself spending more time trying to pick the right podcast, pick the right song, just for a quick shower. When I hit a red light while I'm driving, I'll unconsciously lean over and try to find my phone. And the thing that really gets me is when I close out an app and a few seconds later, I click right back into it. Like I don't even know what that's about. The average American adult spends 6 hours a day on some form of screen, whether it's a smartphone or your work computer. So before we come to the table pointing fingers at kids and say that this phone policy is like strictly a kid issue, it is worth looking at ourselves too and seeing it as a we issue. Here's something actually tangible that you can do. Go look up your own school district's cell phone policy and see when it was updated or if they even have one. Maybe it is still being negotiated, or maybe it is brand new and it's gone live. But because the law only sets the requirement to have a policy, it's noteworthy that the actual policy that is relevant to your kid, to your child, is the one being decided or recently decided at your local school board or district level. And it's going into effect this school year. And at home, now that's a whole different conversation, right? Because it's not like we can outsource these important matters or things to just a school policy or a school document. Every family absolutely needs to have their own plan. This is a non-negotiable task in today's modern technological world, unless you live somewhere very remote. Now, whether it's a policy where screen time is reserved exclusively for the weekends, or whether certain apps are off limits, or just something in between, I will say that one policy that I do believe in wholeheartedly, even for the adults, is to charge your device, charge your phone outside of the bedroom. If I were to suggest any single change to make, it'd be that one. It changes sleep. It changes the way you wake up in the mornings. And it really does set the foundation for the type of week, for the type of semester, school year that your kid will have. It is actually one of the questions that I ask my students often, the ones who are struggling academically or with mental health. I ask them, where do you charge your phone? And unsurprisingly, the majority of them say they go to sleep with them. They go to bed with their phones. And so my challenge to them has been lovingly to encourage them to change that one simple habit and just test it out for a week, 2 weeks, and see what happens. I want us to zoom out for a second, because it's wild to think that in the span of 20 years, which is really not that long, the phones snuck into our everyday lives. It became a part of daily life. In the waiting room, in our cars, at restaurants. It also became a part of our rest, in our bedrooms and in our quiet time. And very significantly, it became a part of our learning spaces, primarily the classroom. The fact that the state had to even pass a bill says a lot. It says a lot about our school system. It says a lot about the way we're family rearing or parenting. But it is a tricky thing, these phones. We never had the prior knowledge or the systems to really accommodate this new technology. We didn't realize how powerful, how addicting, and how impactful these things would be. But what happens if we get this right? Not just the assembly bill, but the spirit, the intent behind it. What happens if we, the adults in the room, take a hard stance on what technology, tech hygiene really means and why it matters? I think it goes beyond just behaving well in class. It goes beyond academics or anything like that. I actually think it's about giving an entire generation of young people a genuine shot at having some agency or self-mastery. It's kind of a chance for them to experience a bit of what prior generations kind of took for granted. Being present, being with people and looking them in the eye, being bored, and letting their minds fill in some of the blank spaces. I think a lot of it has to do with making our own choices and formulating our own thoughts and not just being shepherded around by an algorithm. And I think that's what a human world would be and could be. So I guess the question ultimately with this bill, with the phone policies in schools this year, is whether or not we are willing to do the harder thing for the sake of the people we're raising. And I do believe it's worth it. I just think it's going to be a lot. Whether it's in your own home with your children, with your nephews, your nieces, your classroom, or the kids in your community, in society, I think it's worth taking a hard look at how the phones play a role in our day-to-day. I love you guys. I would love to hear your thoughts on the bill as well as your thoughts on this topic. Have a great week. Be blessed. Peace.